Welcome to the Speak by Design podcast, where we study personal style, message structure, and message strategy so you can become a consistently compelling force. Let's dig in. 18. This is all about strong starts and closes, how to begin and end really well. And that's the mark of a great speaker, is somebody who knows how to begin efficiently and end impactfully. And a lot of this depends on how interactive you want to be at the beginning of your message. If you want to co-create the agenda for your meeting, or you want to get them engaged in a lively discussion up front, you're going to begin with a question. You begin with that question and you make your audience answer it. And you wait until you get a response that's close to what your point would have been. And then you champion the person for delivering that answer, make them feel smart, and boom, you're into your message. There are some people who begin with a series of questions, and I want to remind you of Simon Sinek's very viral talk. It was his TED Talk, and he begins like this. How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, and the same media. Then why is it they seem to have something different? Okay, that was how many questions? 1, 2, 3. I'm looking at it. It's about 6 questions in a row. Now that's overwhelming the curiosity of the audience that even puts them into a feeling of chaos. That chaos is not comfortable, and now he's going to answer all of those questions. This is good for a more emotional talk, but if you're in front of your board or in front of the leadership team, I wouldn't ask a series of 10 questions unless I wanted to put them in some pain. Often just one question is what you need to focus people. And usually your question is something like, how do we increase profitability on something? Or how do we mitigate this risk? It could even be something like, how do we build trust with this customer? How do we find more customers like this other one? Questions like that you want to put out there one at a time and let people respond to them before you move on to other topics. But let's back up and talk about different ways you can start strong. So idea number 1 is begin with a very expansive mindset toward your topic. Instead of looking at it as how do we help our company or how do we help this one location, see if you can go to how do we help the entire population, every community all around the world. What is the biggest lens you could put on your topic that would make sense for your audience? Second idea is plan for very purposeful movement in those opening moments. Your first 90 seconds with a new audience, they are trying to determine, is this presentation or message a valuable part of my day? Is this worth all of my attention and energy? Is this going to be good? Your first 90 seconds, and sometimes it is your first 2 sentences, highlight immediately to the audience whether this is a waste of their time or not. And that is why you want to use everything in your power to be impactful. And body language is one way you can grab attention. And this doesn't mean your body has to look good. It doesn't mean you have to be dressed impeccably. It means that you need to have good posture, definitive gestures, that your gesture needs to end and then it can be released. You don't need to be gesturing all the time, but the gestures are purposeful and the eye contact is on the stronger side of the scale. Okay, third idea. Plan up front to use a bigger voice than you think you need. Now, we've talked about beginning with the consultative voice, which is a whisper tone. Don't hang out there too long. In fact, for a very strong start, you likely want to have your first sentence be louder than the second sentence. So it sounds like this: Hello and welcome. Great to have you all here. So that first sentence highlights to everyone, we are getting started. And because you are speaking louder than what they expected, it's okay if they look a little jarred by the volume that you're speaking at. That is going to help grab their attention and help you demonstrate dominance in the room as the authority on this topic, as the person who's in control of the room. When people talk about how do you command a room, that voice is one of the big elements. Your big booming voice on that first sentence is going to help people understand who's in charge. Then fourth, I want you to think about your eye contact. How can you make the room, the entire room, feel included with your eyes without scanning the audience? It makes you look very scattered if your body is on a pivot table going left to right and scanning every face in the room. Instead, have 3 locations in the room, 3 general areas, and make sure that you can hold eye contact on one person before moving to the second area of the room. Haven't you been in a situation where the speaker only looked at the left side of the room and forgot about the right side of the room, or only looked at the middle of the room and forgot the corners of the room? You want to be someone who, in the first 90 seconds of opening up your topic, you have incorporated the left side and the right side and the middle, but definitely the left and the right side, because often those 2 sides get neglected or one side gets favored. In your opening, your first 90 seconds, make sure there is a place where you are going to pause unexpectedly. A 3-second pause, 1, 2, 3, stands out a mile in that opening section, because most people begin the opening in a rushed, panicked way, eager to get settled into their talk, and they sound nervous. But if you do a purposeful pause, that not only gives you time to take a deep breath and make sure you're centered in your speaking style, but it also gives the audience a moment to adapt to you. You may be speaking in an accent from their point of view. You may have introduced a topic they've never thought about before. Give them a moment to catch up with you. Let's suppose you were beginning with a structure that we call situation, complication, question. And you've described the situation, you've described the complication. Now you pause for 3 seconds and you state the question, and you state it. And that could be, what should we do? What could we do? All right, now, so I said, what should we do? I paused 3 seconds, and then I said, what could we do? I repeated the sentence twice. The repetition of the question, and I did a different vocal style for the second one, is going to increase their hunger for the answer. And I've slowed down enough that they are starting to formulate their own answers because I'm giving them space and time to think. This is a beautiful thing to give your audience. They become even more enraptured with your topic when you give them time to think. You might be wondering, why 90 seconds? Why 90 seconds? Start paying attention to how long it takes for you to lose your attention with a speaker. It's not long. And the opening moments, we do need to cover a few things. We need to get the purpose stated for the talk. We need to figure out what the problem is. We need to understand some of the background. We need to formulate the question that we're going to then answer with this message. And we might need some data and maybe something funny and entertaining in there. You can do all of that in 90 seconds. Likely, you only need 1 minute to do that. Don't take more than 90 seconds. It's a good constraint to give yourself. Now, this question, when you begin with a question, you don't have to let the audience answer it. You can answer it yourself. And in the example I gave with Simon Sinek's talk, where he asks all those rhetorical questions and then he answers it, he does not let his audience answer the question. But I imagine as a listener, you thought you were being asked, and you might have even believed that you were interacting with him because your brain is activated and is starting to answer these questions with him. And that's a beautiful thing to do for an audience, is to use these rhetorical questions. Rhetorical questions end up becoming great provocative transitions throughout the entire presentation or message. As part of our blog, we do a series on great speakers. And the reason we do that is the people that we're coaching, we want them to start learning from other people who have gone before them, other great leaders and speakers who got very good at those opening moments. When you hear of a great talk, and this could be you watching TED Talks, this could be you following some of our great speakers in our blogs, listen to the first 90 seconds and ask yourself, what did they do that built trust with me? There are so many ways to build trust in those opening moments, and there are many ways to destroy it. But study the great ones, because there's not one way to do it. And it is not just in the content, not just in the structure, and not just in the style. It is, do we believe that this person is being themselves? Are they comfortable right now? Is this clear to them? Do I believe that they have expertise and authority on this topic? And that's a lot of that is in the unsaid. It is in the style of the speaker and not the substance of the message. Let's look at engagement techniques you can use to get an audience engaged fast. One of those is to use humor in the opening moments. The first thing out of your mouth is something funny. It could be the rhetorical question. It could be the bottom line, the answer. It could be the dilemma. It could be a look back in the past, and you could draw a trend line to where things are happening today and where they're headed in the future. It could be a future forecast. It could be an analogy that makes your business point, or an anecdote, a personal story even, that helps people understand you as the speaker and make sure that that personal story matches your business point. Otherwise, that actually hurts credibility, because it sounds like you're just talking about yourself to talk about yourself. But all of those creative techniques, beginning with a beautiful image or a video or a demonstration or calling on a volunteer and making a volunteer do something in front of the room. Those are all great ways to do something memorable at the beginning. And then at the end, when you're getting ready to wrap up, this is a part that so many speakers overlook because they spend all their time working on the messy middle of their presentation and the opening moments, and they think, oh, I'll wrap up. I should know how to wrap this up easily, and they don't practice it. But I want to encourage you, please practice the end of your message as well. And the end, most often you're going to do a before we wrap up moment where you say, before we wrap up, are there any further questions on this topic? So that would open you up for Q&A. Or you say, I recognize we have 10 more minutes. Let's open up for questions. All right, so that could be step one if you want to do that, if questions have not happened before. Otherwise, if it's a routine meeting and you need to document next steps, due dates, and owners, that happens here. And you can call on somebody else. You can say, Mary, would you summarize our next steps and who owns them for the group? So you could have somebody else do that, because that's hard if the facilitator had to facilitate and capture all the next steps, due dates, and owners. The last thing, though, this is where we want to do something clever and creative, like I suggested in the opening, but we're going to do it at the end because we want to further reinforce the emotional impact of what we've just talked about. And remember, at the end of every message, the point of now you want them to go think differently and take an action. And that last thing you give them needs to remind them of that action, which is why so many people end with a call to an action, where you're telling people the next step is to do X, or now is the time to do X. So that's a call to action. You could loop back to that funny thing you said at the beginning, so it feels like you're tying a bow on the beautiful message. You could loop back to the beginning to whatever that analogy was, or if you used a quotation, if you told a story, a personal story, you could continue the story and tell something new about it. You could end with a new image. Let's suppose you began with a small sapling tree. That was a picture of a tree, and you said, "This is what we look like." And then at the end, you could show a big, beautiful, healthy, mature tree and say, "This is who we're becoming." But that kind of book ending to the message makes the message very memorable. There's the concept of primary and recency. You remember the first thing and the last thing more than the middle. The first moment and the closing moments stand out more than everything that happens in between, unless your closing is not good. But we want our closings to be really good, and they will be. At the end, you will either do a crescendo or a decrescendo vocally. There are some great examples of vocal crescendos and decrescendos from celebrity speakers and politicians. I always think of Obama and Reagan as good examples of crescendos. They would go up at the end. They would make something a little bit louder as they ended their sentence. Now, that sounds more like Obama to me. And Ronald Reagan vocally is so creative because he could be consultative and soft, and then he would get louder and use more emphasis, and it stood out a mile. I encourage you to look back at some of these speakers and listen to how they use their voices to be emphatic and impact us and make us believe new things. I have a challenge I want to offer you all, because I know the impact of this is huge. For the next 5 work days, be the person who begins their meetings with a strong start. You will notice that the entire meeting is more focused and more productive, all because of the way you're starting that meeting. And I'm going to give you 3 ingredients. There are more I could give you, but this will make it as simple as possible. Purpose, payoff, preview. All right, purpose is the purpose of this meeting is to achieve X, or to discuss blank, or to decide if we're moving forward or not. But make it a one sentence purpose statement. So I say, "Welcome, good to see you all. The purpose of our meeting today is to decide X." Then you're going to give the payoff. And the payoff, there are 2 ways you could do the payoff. You could explain why that purpose is so important. So I could say, the purpose of this meeting is to help us decide whether we're moving forward with that vendor or not, so we can start building the application next week. All right, so that's why we need to make a decision today so we can start next week. That's a type of payoff. I could give a financial payoff. Say we need to decide if we're moving forward this week with this vendor or not, so we can start building the application that's going to open up a new $1 million revenue stream. So now I'm giving a payoff that's financial. I could say the purpose of this meeting is to make a decision so that by the end of this call, I am able to call the vendor and say yes or no. That's giving the payoff is by the end of this meeting, we need to make a decision. All right, that's purpose and payoff. Then preview. This is where I say, here are the 2 to 3 things we need to cover together. Is there anything else we should add? Once I've covered purpose, payoff, and preview, I could move directly into the meeting content. I could say, let's open up the slides, or let me put some things up in front of you, and we could dive right in. When you do that, that's a 30-second introduction, maybe not even 30 seconds. You might be at an organization where nobody is speaking this way. Can you imagine how you stand out as a leader when you're able to be this crisp, concise, and organized, and when you're able to facilitate conversations that effectively? That is a very strong start. So that's my challenge for you. See if you can have a strong start to every meeting you lead for the next 5 days. I can't wait to hear about it. Please let us know how that goes. Have a great week, everyone. Take care. If you are enjoying all of these lessons, but now you're hungering to turn all of this into skills and habits that make this work intuitive and natural so that you don't have to think about it, then you want to join Speak by Design University. That's our coaching program that gives you private coaching, group coaching with me, group training, self-paced learning, as well as exceptional networking with other people like you. This program is for managers and above, people whose careers are on fire and they're looking to hit their next level, and they want to do that sooner rather than later. Check it out at speakbydesign.com/join. That's speakbydesign.com/join, and you can start with us at the 1st of next month. We hope to see you there.